never thought I'd be working in a haunted fire station. In fact, I didn't believe in ghosts, or at least I didn't think I did. But everything changed the moment I walked into Station 13 for my first shift. The old building had an unsettling air about it, one that I couldn't shake, no matter how many times I tried to ignore it. It was a small, weather-beaten station on the outskirts of town, tucked away in an industrial area that no one really paid attention to. The firehouse itself was ancient, a relic from a bygone era, with peeling paint and darkened windows. The faint smell of smoke lingered in the walls, mixed with the dampness of years of neglect. When I arrived for the interview, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. The ad had seemed simple enough. Firefighter needed at Station 13. Immediate start. Competitive pay. The pay was good, and honestly, I wasn't expecting much more than a regular fire station job. What I didn't know, what no one told me, was that Station 13 had its own history. A history that would soon become my worst nightmare. The first thing I noticed when I walked in was the strange quiet. It was late afternoon, just before sunset, yet the station felt deserted. The usual hustle and bustle you'd expect at a firehouse was missing. The lockers sat undisturbed, the kitchen was eerily silent, and even the fire truck in the garage sat in complete stillness, as if waiting for something, or someone, to wake it from its slumber. When I walked through the back door, I was greeted by an older firefighter named Mike. He was the one who had called me in for the interview, and his eyes were heavy with the weight of experience. Mike was a good guy, serious but with a dry sense of humor that helped make the long shifts easier. He showed me around the station, and for a moment, everything felt normal. The gear was well organized, the equipment in good condition, and everything appeared to be in working order. But then Mike stopped at the basement door. "Here's the thing," he said, looking at me seriously. "The station's got a history, and you're going to hear a lot of rumors about the basement, but don't let them get to you. The only thing you need to worry about is sticking to the job." I frowned. "What's in the basement?" Mike's eyes darted briefly to the door before he shrugged it off. "Nothing you need to worry about. It's just, some things are better left alone. You'll get used to it. Just don't go down there and we'll all be fine." I wasn't sure what he meant by that, but I didn't push it. I had work to do, and I had my sights set on becoming a part of this crew. The last thing I needed was to get caught up in some bizarre station lore. But there was something about the way Mike said it, something in his tone, that made me wonder if he was hiding something. Introduction to the job. Mike handed me a set of keys and a uniform. "Get settled in. You start tonight. The crew's downstairs in the common room." I nodded, still processing what he had said about the basement, and made my way toward the dormitory. As I walked through the station, I could feel the weight of its age. The walls were thick with the kind of history that only a building as old as this one could carry. Stories, secrets, and maybe something darker. But I pushed the thoughts away. This was my first night, and I wasn't going to let anything distract me from doing my job. The guys in the dormitory were already preparing for the shift. They were friendly, if not a little quiet, but I quickly fell into the rhythm of things. We went through our evening routine, checking gear, making sure the trucks were prepped, and then Mike called us into the briefing room. Everything seemed fine. Too fine. But as the night drew closer, I began to feel the unease creeping back. I wasn't sure what it was. Maybe it was the way the building seemed to groan in the wind, or how the lights flickered every so often, but something didn't sit right. Still, I kept my cool. I was here to work, and that was what mattered. The first call came in around 11:30 p.m. It was routine. A small fire in an old abandoned warehouse. It was nothing we couldn't handle. As we loaded up the trucks and headed out, I tried to shake off the unsettling feeling that had settled in the pit of my stomach. The fire was quickly contained, and the night passed without incident. But when we returned to Station 13 in the early hours of the morning, that strange feeling returned. I couldn't shake it. The station felt different, somehow colder. As I was unloading my gear, I saw it again. The basement door cracked open just a little. I could have sworn it had been closed earlier. Something inside me urged me to investigate, to find out what was really down there. But the thought of breaking Mike's warning, the look in his eyes when he talked about the basement, kept me at bay. I didn't need to go down there, not yet. But the next night, I was certain I would. As I walked past the basement door on my second shift, I stopped. The door was wide open now, and I could hear a low hum coming from beneath the floor, like the sound of machinery running. My heart raced as I stared into the darkness below, the faint smell of something burning wafting up from the steps. The air felt thick, and every instinct in my body told me to turn around and walk away. But I couldn't. With every ounce of courage I had, I took a step forward and descended into the basement. The stairs creaked beneath my feet as I made my way down, and with every step, the air grew colder. And then, just as I reached the bottom of the stairs, I saw it. The light flickered on, casting an eerie glow over the room, and there, in the corner, was a figure. I froze. The light flickered on with a soft hum, revealing the basement in all its unsettling, decaying glory. The walls were lined with pipes and old, rusted machinery, but it wasn't the decaying equipment that caught my attention. It was the figure. A man, or what looked like a man, was standing in the far corner of the basement. His back was turned to me, but I could see his figure clearly in the dim light. He was tall, wearing a faded firefighter uniform, but something about him was wrong. His posture was stiff, unnatural, like he was frozen in place. His face, obscured by shadows, gave off an eerie aura, and as I stood there in the doorway, I could feel his presence weighing on me. My breath hitched as I took a step forward, my body shaking with a mixture of fear and curiosity. I had to know who this person was. I had to know why Mike had warned me about the basement. I took another step, my boots scraping against the cold concrete floor. The figure didn't move. I called out, my voice shaky. "Hey, you okay?" No response. I glanced around nervously, scanning the basement for any signs of life or explanation. The old machinery hummed, but there was no sign of a fire or danger. Nothing that would explain why anyone would be down here. I called out again, louder this time. "Hello?" Still nothing. I took a few more steps, my heart pounding louder than my footsteps. I was about to reach out and tap the figure on the shoulder when he suddenly turned. The face that met me wasn't human. It was contorted and pale, like the skin had been stretched too tightly over the skull. His eyes were wide and bulging, an unnatural, glassy sheen covering them. His mouth was slightly open, revealing crooked teeth that looked as though they had been filed to sharp points. I recoiled, instinctively stepping back. The figure's lips curled into something that might have been a smile, but it wasn't human. It was the smile of something wrong. I stumbled back, my mind reeling with fear. The air in the basement felt heavier, thicker, as if the shadows themselves were pressing in on me. The figure stood there, motionless, his eyes locked onto mine, unblinking. I tried to speak, to demand answers, but the words caught in my throat. Something about this place, this thing, paralyzed me. The sound of my own breath was deafening in the silence. And then the figure spoke. "You shouldn't have come down here," it rasped, its voice low and guttural, as though it hadn't spoken in years. I tried to back away, but my legs felt like they were made of stone. My heart raced in my chest, my body frozen with terror. "Why?" I managed to croak. "Who are you?" The figure tilted its head, its grin widening, revealing rows of jagged teeth that seemed to grow longer as he spoke. "Who I am is not important. What matters is what you've awakened." Suddenly, the walls of the basement seemed to close in on me, the air thick with a strange pressure. The low hum of the machinery grew louder, its vibration resonating through my bones. The lights flickered again, casting long, distorted shadows across the room. The figure took a step forward, its movements jerky and unnatural, like it was fighting against some unseen force. I stumbled backward, my hand reaching for the door, but the basement seemed to stretch farther now. The doorway that had been so close was suddenly miles away. Panic surged in my chest. "What have I woken?" I demanded, my voice shaking. The figure didn't answer at first. Instead, it raised one long, bony hand, pointing toward a darkened corner of the basement. There, hidden behind the machinery, was something I hadn't noticed before. A door. It was made of heavy, aged wood, the edges cracked and worn. The metal hinges had rusted over time, and the door frame was framed by shadows that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. "That," the figure said, its voice softer now, almost a whisper, "is where it all began. The town's curse, the firehouse's burden. You don't just watch here, you become part of it." I turned toward the door, drawn in by the figure's words. My curiosity was stronger than my fear, but deep down, I knew I shouldn't go any further. The figure's voice had planted a seed of dread in my mind, and the thought of what was behind that door filled me with unease. I reached for the door handle, my hand trembling. As I touched the cold wood, a sudden chill shot through my arm, and the shadows around the door seemed to stretch, warping and writhing like something was reaching out to pull me in. The figure behind me let out a low, satisfied laugh. "You don't need to open it," he said, his voice filled with a cruel amusement. "You already have." I froze, my hand still on the door handle. The words echoed in my mind as the door creaked open by itself, slowly, as if inviting me inside. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt an icy chill crawl up my spine. The basement seemed to grow colder, the shadows thickening around me. A low, guttural sound came from the darkness beyond the door, like something was waiting, watching, hungry. I could hear it now, clearer than before, the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from the other side of the door. And then, the figure's voice whispered in my ear, "There's no turning back now." The door creaked open on its own, groaning under the weight of time and neglect. My heart was in my throat as I stood there, my hand still gripping the cold brass handle, unable to look away from the darkness that yawned beyond it. The shadows beyond the door seemed to move, pulse even, as if the space itself were alive and breathing. I couldn't turn back now. The figure had spoken, and the air in the basement seemed to thicken, pressing in on me, urging me forward. I had crossed a line, and I knew it. Whatever lay beyond that door was the key to everything. The truth about the firehouse, the cursed town, and the things that had happened here long before I arrived. But part of me knew this was something I wasn't meant to find. I stepped forward, my boots echoing loudly in the basement's now heavy silence. The hum of the machinery seemed to fade into the background, drowned out by the growing weight of the darkness. The figure behind me remained motionless, watching with that same twisted, empty smile. I didn't dare look back at it. My gaze was fixed on the door ahead. As I entered, the air grew colder. The basement light flickered once, twice, casting uneven shadows that twisted and stretched as if the walls themselves were moving. I shuddered, pulling my jacket tighter around me, the cold seeping into my bones. The room beyond the door was smaller than I expected. The stone walls were lined with old, rusted tools and forgotten pieces of firefighting equipment. But the most unsettling part was the far wall, where a large, faded photograph hung crookedly. The picture was old, sepia-toned, showing a group of firefighters, their faces grim but determined. The men were dressed in old uniforms, standing proudly beside what looked like the original fire truck that had been housed in Station 13. But the faces, they were wrong. They were blurred, twisted, like the photo had been taken at the exact moment something was moving in the background. A faint blur of shadow in the corner, something I couldn't make out, stood just outside the frame. The hairs on my neck prickled as I stepped closer to the photograph, my breath fogging in the cold air. There was something about it, something off. I couldn't tear my gaze away. Behind the photograph, I noticed something odd. A seam, a line where the wall seemed to part slightly. As I leaned in, my hand trembling, I gently pressed against the photo. With a loud snap, the frame slid to the side, revealing a small, hidden compartment in the wall. Inside was a metal box, tarnished and covered in dust. My breath hitched in my chest as I pulled it out, its weight solid and cold in my hands. The box was locked, but I wasn't sure why. Instinctively, I didn't need the key. Something urged me to open it, to see what it contained. With a sharp twist of the latch, the lid creaked open, revealing old papers, and underneath them, a small, blackened object, something I couldn't immediately identify. I picked up the object, my fingers cold as I turned it over. It was a pendant, a silver chain attached to a small, ornate key. The key's teeth were jagged, worn from age, but unmistakably real. I didn't understand what it was at first, until the photograph flashed in my mind. The same key, the same shape. It was a key to something deeper, something that had been locked away in this station for far too long. A cold wind swept through the basement, rattling the pipes on the walls. The pendant in my hand felt heavier, as though it was pulling me toward something. The figure from the top of the stairs stepped forward, its twisted grin never wavering. "You found it," it said, its voice no longer a whisper, but a dark, commanding tone. "The key to everything, the key to the truth." I turned slowly to face it. What truth? What is this key for? The figure didn't answer. Instead, it gestured toward the back of the basement. I hadn't noticed it before, but there was another door. It was hidden behind a stack of old fire hoses, and it had been sealed for years. "That door," it rasped, "holds the answers you seek. But be warned, not all truths are meant to be uncovered." I swallowed hard, fear creeping into my chest. Why me? Why now? The figure's face twisted, its grin widening impossibly wide. "You're here because you're meant to be. You were always meant to find it." I stepped toward the door, the pendant growing heavier in my hand as I approached. I hesitated for a moment, glancing back at the figure, whose hollow eyes locked onto mine. The basement grew darker as I touched the handle of the door, the metal cold and unyielding. I turned the knob, and the door swung open. But what I saw behind it wasn't what I expected. The room was empty, its walls bare except for a single large mirror on the far side. The reflection staring back at me wasn't my own. It was a different man, dressed in an old firefighter uniform, his face twisted in a silent scream. The mirror vibrated, and a strange, low hum filled the air. I tried to step back, but the door slammed shut behind me, trapping me inside. The mirror's surface rippled, and I could feel something watching me from within, something that had been waiting for me all along. The hum grew louder, more insistent, and the reflection in the mirror twisted again, this time reaching out toward me. And I couldn't move. I stood frozen, my hand still gripping the cold metal door handle. The reflection in the mirror was no longer just a mirror. It was a window into something far darker. The figure inside, wearing an old firefighter uniform, stared back at me with wide, hollow eyes, its mouth twisted into a silent scream. The air around me felt thick with a presence I couldn't see, yet I could feel it pressing in on me from all sides. The reflection in the mirror reached out, slowly, deliberately, and I felt a cold chill run down my spine. I couldn't move. My feet were rooted to the floor, my heart pounding in my chest, as if the mirror had some power over me, binding me in place. The reflection's hand stretched toward me, and in a split second, the temperature in the room plummeted. I felt a wave of icy air sweep through the space, and the mirror seemed to shimmer, the surface rippling like water disturbed by a stone. I tried to step back, but my legs wouldn't respond. It was as if the mirror was pulling me in, drawing me closer to its dark, endless depths. The figure's fingers in the reflection were now inches away from my face, and its hollow eyes seemed to reach into me, like it was searching for something, some part of me that was meant to be there. A low, guttural whisper filled the room. It came from the mirror, but the sound was inside my head, as if the figure in the glass was speaking directly to me. The words were distorted, like a broken record, but I could make them out. "You've unlocked it. You've awakened it." The words struck me like a blow. I didn't understand. What had I unlocked? What had I awoken? Before I could react, the figure's hand slammed against the mirror, causing the surface to ripple violently. The room seemed to shake with a low, thunderous vibration, and for a moment, I felt like the very foundation of the building was being torn apart. The reflection began to change. The firefighter's face twisted and warped, its skin peeling back, revealing something beneath, a grotesque, rotting face with eyes too large for its skull and a mouth filled with rows of sharp, jagged teeth. The figure's body bent unnaturally as though it were shifting, trying to escape the confines of the mirror. I couldn't look away, no matter how badly I wanted to. The image of the figure's face, distorted and horrifying, was burned into my mind, and I could feel its presence all around me. Then, the whispering grew louder, more frantic. It wasn't just one voice anymore, it was a chorus of voices, all overlapping, each one distorted and full of pain. "It's not just the station, it's the town. It's all of Hollow Creek." The words blurred together, but I could hear enough to understand. Whatever had been waiting in that mirror, whatever had been trapped for so long, wasn't confined to the station. It was tied to the town, Hollow Creek itself, and I had unwittingly set it free. The vibrations in the room intensified, and the mirror seemed to pull me in, its surface swirling like a whirlpool. I could feel the coldness in the air growing deeper, more suffocating. I tried to tear my eyes away from the reflection, but I couldn't. It was like I was being drawn into the mirror itself, unable to escape. And then I heard it. A sound, faint at first, like the scraping of metal on stone, followed by a low, growling hiss. The noise was coming from behind me, from the darkness of the basement. It was too deep, too primal to be human. It sent a shiver down my spine, and I instinctively turned around, desperate to escape whatever horror was waiting for me. The air felt heavy, thick with something that wasn't right. My flashlight flickered, casting quick, disorienting shadows across the room. I moved toward the stairs, my heart racing. But as I reached the first step, I heard the growl again, louder, more distinct this time. "You can't leave," a voice whispered from behind me, just a breath against my ear. I spun around, but there was nothing there, just the empty, dimly lit basement stretching out before me. Yet I could feel the presence. It was all around me, closing in on me from all sides. I backed up the stairs quickly, my hand still on the railing, but the basement didn't seem to end. The walls seemed to stretch longer, the shadows growing thicker with each step I took. My breath came in short gasps, and my body was shaking uncontrollably. Suddenly, the growling returned, this time coming from the bottom of the stairs. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I turned to look down, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The figure from the mirror was there, standing at the base of the stairs. It was no longer just a reflection. It was real. The same twisted, decaying face, the same crooked smile. It opened its mouth, revealing rows of sharp, blackened teeth. "Come closer," it hissed. I didn't wait to hear more. I turned and bolted up the stairs, my legs finally obeying the terror that had taken hold of me. I sprinted toward the exit, but as I reached the door, I slammed into an invisible wall of cold air. The door was locked. "You can't leave," the voice repeated, this time from all directions. The figure was getting closer. The growl echoed louder. The room grew colder, and the door wouldn't open. My breath came in ragged gasps as I stumbled backward, my hand still gripping the door, but it refused to budge. The growl behind me had stopped, but in its place came something worse. The sound of scraping metal, louder now, like claws dragging across concrete. I couldn't move, couldn't think. The world around me seemed to stretch and warp, the walls closing in like the town was swallowing me whole. The figure from the mirror was getting closer, its twisted grin widening, revealing jagged teeth that seemed to grow longer with each step it took toward me. I could feel the presence of something larger, something darker, pushing against me from every direction. The walls of the station seemed to pulse, as if the building itself were alive, feeding on my fear. I turned around, desperately searching for another way out, but the room had shifted. The stairs, the door, everything had become distorted. It felt like the station itself had changed its shape, like I was stuck in some kind of nightmare I couldn't escape from. The town had claimed me. I had been drawn into its darkness, and there was no way out. The growl returned, this time not from behind me but from deep within the station. It was a sound like a thunderstorm, vibrating the walls, shaking the very foundations of the building. My legs felt like jelly, and my chest tightened with every breath I tried to take. I couldn't stop the fear that was crawling up my spine, spreading like wildfire through my body. The figure reached the bottom of the stairs and slowly began to climb, its movements jerky and unnatural. Its body flickered in and out of reality, like it wasn't fully here, like it was just a part of the darkness that had come to life. "You're here for a reason," the figure rasped, its voice a low hiss that filled my mind. "The town wants you. You will join us." It was impossible to ignore its words. impossible to break free from the grip of terror that had taken hold of me. The air in the basement had become thick with an ancient, suffocating presence. The town wasn't just a place, it was a living thing, and now it was alive and hungry. I couldn't think, I couldn't move. Every instinct told me to run, but my body wouldn't obey. The figure took another step forward, its hand outstretched, long fingers reaching for me. The space around me felt too small, too suffocating. I was caught, trapped in the heart of the station, and I was starting to understand that there was no escape. "This is where it all begins," the figure said, its grin widening even more. "The firehouse, the mine, the town. It was all made for this, for you." I shook my head, unable to comprehend what it was saying. "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" The figure stopped, its eyes gleaming with a dark knowledge. "This town, Hollow Creek, it's cursed. It was never abandoned. It was sealed. We were trapped here, bound by the firehouse, by the very land itself. But now you've unlocked the door. You've opened the way." I took a shaky step back, my hands trembling as I tried to piece it all together. The whispers, the knocking, the figure in the mirror. It wasn't just a ghost story. The town had never been abandoned. It had been locked away. The figure took another step, its presence growing heavier. The firehouse was built over something ancient, something dark, and now it's free. I turned toward the door again, my hand still on the handle. I had to get out. I had to stop this. But the door was no longer just a door. It was a wall. The metal latch had fused to the frame, and the air felt thick with something unnatural, as if the station itself had sealed me inside. The figure reached the top of the stairs, its face now inches from mine. I could see the decayed, lifeless skin, the gaping black holes where its eyes should have been. It smiled at me, its jagged teeth gleaming in the dim light. "There's no escaping it," the figure whispered. "You're already part of it. Welcome to Hollow Creek." The ground beneath me began to rumble, the vibrations getting stronger, like the town itself was waking up, coming to life. The walls of the firehouse creaked and groaned, and I could hear someone moving beneath the floorboards. The scraping sound was louder now, and I could feel it vibrating through my body. And then the mirror in the basement flickered to life. The reflection was no longer just an image. It was a doorway, a portal that stretched into the darkness of the town. The reflection of my own face stared back at me, but now it was twisted, distorted. It was as if the town had taken me, had claimed me as one of its own. I turned toward the figure, but it was already too late. The door behind me, the one I had been trying to escape through, was gone. The walls were closing in, and the figure smiled. "You belong to us now." The air in the basement was thick, heavier now, like the walls themselves were closing in. The growling sound beneath the floor had intensified, reverberating through the building, making the very ground shake beneath my feet. I could feel the floorboards groaning, as if something was moving underneath, pushing upward, trying to escape. The figure in front of me smiled again, its grin widening to an unnatural size, its hollow eyes glowing with that sickly light. The whispers filled my ears, growing louder with every passing second, and I could feel the weight of the entire town pressing in on me. There was no escape, no way out. "You're part of the town now," the figure whispered, its voice low and raspy. "It's too late for you." I tried to speak, to find some words of defiance, but my mouth went dry. The figure took another step toward me, its shadow stretching unnaturally across the basement floor. It reached out a hand, its fingers long and skeletal, and I could feel its icy touch before it even made contact. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't move. It was as though the very air had frozen around me, as though the town had wrapped itself around my heart, squeezing the life out of me, binding me to it. "You're here now," the figure continued, its voice almost soothing, like a lullaby. "You're here, and you'll never leave. Not now. Not ever." The ground rumbled again, and I stumbled back, feeling the walls of the basement closing in around me. My vision blurred, the edges of the room bending and warping, as though the firehouse itself was distorting, becoming something else. "Help me," a voice whispered from the darkness, barely audible, but it felt like it came from inside my head. "Get out, before it's too late." I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. Who was that? It wasn't the figure. It wasn't the whispering chorus. It was something else. Someone else. Before I could react, the floor beneath me cracked open. The light from the basement flickered, and a dark, oily liquid began to seep from the cracks in the walls and floor. It was thick, black as tar, and it spread across the floor in a slow, crawling motion, like it was alive, moving, reaching for me. "The town is hungry," the figure said, its voice suddenly turning sharp and cold. "And now, it has you." I tried to take a step back, but the liquid reached out, wrapping around my ankles, cold and suffocating. My breath caught in my throat as I felt the pressure build, pulling me down into the blackness. I stumbled, trying to break free, but the ground seemed to shift beneath me, pulling me closer to the center of the basement, toward the heart of whatever darkness lay beneath the station. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and the figure's grin stretched wider as it watched me struggle. I didn't know what to do. The walls seemed to pulse with life, the shadows closing in. The figure was standing in front of me now, towering over me, its hollow eyes locked onto mine. "You'll never leave this town," it whispered again, its voice now a low, guttural growl. "You belong to us now. We are one." The darkness was suffocating, and I could feel the weight of its grip tightening around me. The liquid at my feet was crawling higher now, wrapping around my knees, pulling me deeper into the cold, dark abyss. And then I heard it again. "Help me," the voice whispered once more, softer now, almost a plea. I turned to look toward the sound, but the basement was empty. There was no one there, except for the figure. I couldn't explain it, but something about that voice, the desperation in it, struck a chord deep within me. A flicker of hope in the midst of the horror. I had to find out where it was coming from. I reached down, trying to shake off the black liquid that was now rising up my legs, my body trembling with the effort to move. My hand touched the cold stone floor, and that's when I saw it. A crack in the wall, faint but distinct, running along the edge of the room. Behind it, there was something. A hidden door, almost invisible in the shadows. I turned to face the figure, my heart hammering in my chest. The figure didn't move, its expression still twisted in that grotesque smile, but I could feel the tension building. I had to reach the door. I had to get out. I pushed forward, stumbling, my body fighting against the suffocating pull of the darkness. The whispers were deafening now, filling my mind, my soul, until it felt like the very air was choking me. And then, just as I reached the crack in the wall, I heard it, the voice again. "Don't look behind you.